The sun was setting on Toma Star, casting an orange glow over the horizon that seemed to be swallowed by the thick forests. The air, though breathable, was charged with a slight hum, something subtle, a faint vibration in the atmosphere. It was a sound that hadn't registered in Ethan Drake's mind until now. He was standing outside the temporary outpost, adjusting his boots, eyes on the radial comms display. There had been talk of strange electromagnetic readings from the mining zones earlier today, but he hadn't paid much attention. Mining. They were here to mine. To survive, but the plants, those weird alien plants, had caught his attention instead. Something about them always seemed to watch, and despite the colonists' enthusiasm about Toma's lush, alien ecosystem, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Maya, are you sure these things aren't poisonous? Ethan asked, squinting at one of the glowing vines near the mining entrance. Maya Tanton, the colony's botanist, glanced up from her tablet, looking at him with amusement. Her bright red hair caught the last light of the dying sun. Oh, I'm sure, Captain. Totally harmless. Unless you lick them, of course. Then you might get a very bad trip. Ethan gave her a dry look, hands on his hips. Somehow, I think I'll pass on the vine tasting. What do you think these things are doing? Maya smiled. She had that unflappable optimism that Ethan usually admired in her, except right now, it felt a little misplaced. They were deep into a planet no one had ever seen before, and something just didn't feel right. They're bioconstructs, Ethan. Not plants in the traditional sense. These things are alive, aware, even. Their bioelectric activity is off the charts. It's like they're part of a greater system. Ethan nodded absently, but his thoughts were already drifting. This was supposed to be a fresh start for humanity. No more wars, no more strife. Just wide, open plains of untouched land, ready to be harvested and turned into something better than Earth had been. But in the back of his mind, that hum, the hum he couldn't ignore, kept gnawing at him. Captain, we have a problem, came the voice of Tariq Ahmed, the colony's communications officer, cutting into Ethan's thoughts. Ethan tapped his earpiece. What's up, Tariq? We've been getting strange signals from the mining zone. We can't confirm the source, but the interference is starting to mess with the comms and our energy grid. We've had minor fluctuations in the system, but now it's getting serious. We're talking full-scale electromagnetic disruption. Ethan sighed. He could hear the stress in Tariq's voice. The kind that made even the best soldiers lose their cool. Get to the point. What's the plan? We don't know yet. But I think we're going to need to halt operations in the northern quadrant at least until we can figure out what's going on. There's a biome disturbance that we've never encountered before. Could be something to do with the local flora. Ethan ran a hand through his dark hair, glancing once again at the vines wrapping around the base of the colony's shuttle launch pad. Keep me updated, Tariq. I'm heading out to check the mines myself. Maya, you're with me. Let's go see what the hell is going on with these plants. The journey to the mining zone took them through dense underbrush, the air thick with the scent of wildflowers, and the distant hum of unseen creatures in the trees. The forest was teeming with life unseen, unknown, and to Ethan, almost eerily sentient. The trees swayed in unison, their large, bioluminescent leaves shimmering with the same glow as the vines. Maya was in her element, completely absorbed by the alien plants, scanning and taking samples with an energy that Ethan found almost infectious, but something about the planet was beginning to unnerve him. Maya, how much longer until we reach the core site? Ethan asked, his voice cutting through the odd, whispering wind that seemed to hum through the foliage. Another mile or so, she answered, eyes focused on her data pad. If we can get to the core, we might be able to identify the energy signatures responsible for all the disturbances. Yeah, well, I've got a bad feeling about this, Ethan muttered. The last time I had a feeling like this, the ship nearly blew up on the outer rim. Maya gave him a smile that seemed just a little too wide. Come on, Captain. You're always expecting the worst. Let's have some faith in the science. Everything's going to be fine. But as they walked deeper into the forest, the hum only grew louder. And then a shift in the air. Ethan stopped abruptly, eyes scanning the underbrush. "Did you hear that?" Maya, who had been walking ahead, didn't respond immediately. Then she turned back to face him, her eyes wide. Wait. Something's off." Before they could react, the ground beneath them rumbled, shaking the earth with a sudden force. A low, deep growl reverberated through the air. Then, all at once, the plants, those strange, glowing vines, seemed to come alive, wrapping around trees, twisting and curling like serpents. Ethan's hand went to his sidearm, but before he could even draw, bright, swirling lights appeared from the trees. They looked like floating jellyfish made of pure bioluminescence, their tentacles glowing like etheric flames. They moved swiftly, silently, and before Maya or Ethan could react, one of the jellyfish-like creatures floated directly in front of them, radiating an otherworldly energy. "Ethan," Maya's voice was shaky now. "I don't think we're alone anymore." The creature paused, its tendrils gently brushing against the side of a nearby tree. Then, just as quickly, it spoke, or at least, it felt like speech. The voice came through their minds, soft and disturbing. "You are destroying us." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He'd heard rumors, whispers, mostly about intelligent life on Toma Star, but nothing had prepared him for this. The iris. The planet itself was speaking to them. He took a deep breath, stepping closer to Maya, who was now frozen in place. "You're not real. This is some kind of hallucination," he muttered to himself, but the creature's voice persisted, clear as day. "You are hurting us. The balance is breaking. Leave now, or you will all be lost." The message, cryptic and unsettling, hung in the air for what felt like an eternity. Ethan tried to make sense of it, to rationalize the alien warning. But there was no rationalizing it. They were dealing with something far beyond human comprehension, something that saw the colonists' presence as an infection, a disease to be purged. As the creature floated back into the trees, the hum in the air died down. The vines, too, seemed to lose their eerie sentience, falling back into a passive, dormant state. Maya was the first to speak, her voice trembling. We need to report this. The iris, they're not a myth, are they?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He was too busy trying to process everything, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders like a stone. The tension was unbearable, and yet, it felt like the first real hint of the crisis they were all going to face. Ethan's boots crunched through the underbrush as he and Maya made their way back to the outpost. The silence that followed the encounter with the iris felt heavy, a strange weight pressing down on them as they trudged through the alien forest. Maya, for once, was quiet, her usual energy replaced by a pensive mood that Ethan couldn't quite read. He glanced over at her, trying to read her face in the dimming light. She had always been the optimist, the one who saw hope where others saw disaster, but now she looked uncertain. "That was real, wasn't it?" she finally asked, her voice small, barely audible above the hum of the evening breeze. Ethan didn't answer right away. The question had no easy answer, but he wasn't in the mood to lie. "I don't know. But whatever that was, it wasn't a hallucination. Something on this planet is trying to tell us something. And it doesn't want us here." Maya stopped in her tracks, her breath visible in the cool air, eyes widening. "Do you think it's trying to communicate with us? I mean, not just a warning, but, yeah. But how do we respond to that?" Ethan interrupted, his voice tight. "We've already destroyed the ecosystem in ways we can't even understand. How do you negotiate with the planet itself? With a species that doesn't even see us as worthy of existence?" Maya bit her lip, looking down at the ground. "Maybe we don't negotiate. Maybe we listen. Maybe it's too late to just pack up and leave. Maybe we should find a way to make this work. I don't know. But I'm not ready to give up on this." She gestured toward the sprawling landscape, the new world, their new home. Ethan's heart was still racing from the eerie encounter. Part of him wanted to believe Maya. After all, they'd fought for this planet, worked so hard to build something that was supposed to be better. But in the back of his mind, something nagged at him. What if it was already too late? By the time they reached the base, the sky had darkened, and the familiar outlines of the outpost structures emerged from the shadows. Ethan pushed the door open, stepping into the dimly lit command center. The air inside felt stale, sterile, as if the place was suffocating under the weight of its own ambitions. A few engineers and scientists were scattered about, eyes glued to their monitors. Tarek looked up from a console, his face pale, as if he'd been waiting for them. "Captain," he said, his voice laced with urgency. "You need to see this." Ethan nodded, motioning for Maya to follow him. They crossed to the center of the room, where Tarek had a live feed streaming from one of the mining sites. The screen flickered as it showed a desolate stretch of land, now marked with blackened patches, the aftermath of the mining operation. But it wasn't the destruction that caught Ethan's eye. It was the creature. Hovering just above the blackened soil was one of the glowing jellyfish-like beings from earlier. It floated in the air, its translucent form shifting in subtle, hypnotic waves. But this time, it wasn't alone. More and more of the creatures appeared, filling the screen with their otherworldly presence. They weren't just reacting to the mining site, they were converging on it, gathering, as if in some sort of ritual. "What the hell is going on?" Ethan muttered, his hand instinctively tightening around the edge of the console. "Is this a warning? Or a declaration of war?" Tarek shook his head. "We can't get a clear reading. Whatever they're doing, it's affecting the planet's electromagnetic field. The whole grid is destabilizing. The more they cluster, the worse the interference gets." "How bad is it?" Maya asked, eyes still fixed on the screen. "Bad enough that if we don't shut down the mining operations soon, we risk complete system failure." Tarek's voice was grim. "And if we lose the grid, we lose everything: the colony, the life support systems, everything we've built here." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, thinking quickly. The stakes had just gotten much higher. "We need to contact command. Get them to send in reinforcements or something." "We've tried," Tarek replied, shaking his head. "We've lost all communication with the rest of the fleet. It's like the planet is cutting us off. No comms, no support, no backup." Ethan's stomach sank. The realization that they were alone, truly alone, began to settle in. He glanced at Maya, who looked as uncertain as he felt. "We've got two choices, then. We shut everything down, risk losing all our progress, and pray this goes away. Or we keep pushing forward, fight back, and risk destroying the planet." Maya met his gaze. "And if we don't choose soon, we might not have a planet left to fight for." The weight of the decision hung in the air like a dark cloud. Ethan could feel the tension tightening his chest. He thought back to the moment in the forest, and the planet had spoken through the creature. The voice had been clear. "You are destroying us." What if they had already gone too far? What if the iris, the planet's sentient ecosystem, had already condemned them? The next few hours passed in a blur. The crew worked frantically to stabilize the outpost, but everything seemed to be falling apart faster than they could handle. The interference from the iris grew stronger, and soon the shuttle launch pads went dark, followed by the mining rigs. The hum of the alien energy field seemed to vibrate through the walls, unsettling the colonists and making every step feel like a misstep. Maya, who had been trying to decipher the strange energy readings from the planet, now sat hunched over her tablet, eyes flickering nervously. "Ethan," she called, her voice tight. "You need to see this." Ethan crossed the room, looking over her shoulder. The screen was filled with an analysis of the planet's electromagnetic field, but what caught his eye was the sudden, jagged pattern that had appeared in the data. "That doesn't look natural," he said quietly. "No," Maya said, tapping at the tablet to enlarge the display. That's not just electromagnetic interference. This is something actively disrupting the planet's natural balance. Disrupting? Ethan frowned. What the hell does that mean? Think of it like a heart attack for a planet, Maya explained. The planet's ecosystem is self-regulating, everything works together. But if we keep mining, if we keep taking resources, we're creating a feedback loop that's destroying that balance. This, she pointed at the data, this is the planet's response to shock. It's trying to heal itself by shutting us out. Ethan stared at the screen for a long moment, the reality of their situation sinking in. The creature's words echoed in his mind. Leave now, or you will all be lost. I think we've made a mistake, Ethan said slowly. Maybe not an intentional one, but a mistake nonetheless. Maya looked at him, her eyes wide. What do you mean? I think the Iris were trying to tell us something. And we've ignored it. We've been so focused on what we need to survive, we haven't considered what the planet needs to survive. There was a long silence between them. Maya's fingers paused mid-air, hovering over her tablet as she processed his words. You're right, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We've been so focused on us that we've forgotten we're guests here. Ethan's decision came quickly after that realization. He called an emergency meeting with the senior officers, and within an hour, the plans to halt the mining operations were set into motion. But the more they worked, the more it became clear, it wasn't going to be enough. The planet had already begun to reject them, and no amount of shutdown protocols could reverse the damage they'd done. By the time the last mining rig was powered down, it was too late. The planet's ecosystem had begun to unravel, and the Iris were not just warning them anymore. They were restructuring the electromagnetic field in ways that made the colony's systems increasingly unstable. In the quiet that followed, Ethan found himself standing outside the outpost once again, staring up at the alien sky. The stars shone brightly above, but they felt so far away, as though the universe itself had already moved on without them. We're not getting out of this, Ethan muttered to himself. He wasn't speaking to anyone in particular. The hum in the air was still there, but now it felt final. The planet had made its choice. It had been patient for far too long. The night air had a strange, biting chill to it. Ethan stood alone outside the outpost, staring up at the sky, his mind racing. The silence was almost suffocating, the kind of silence that makes you feel like you're not just alone but abandoned. The stars twinkled above, beautiful but distant, cold and indifferent. The same stars they had all hoped would be a guide to a better future. Now, they felt like an unreachable dream, far removed from the crisis that was unfolding beneath them. He turned away from the horizon and headed back into the outpost, his boots crunching softly against the frozen ground. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The crew had been working around the clock to try and stabilize the colony, but the truth was clear, they were running out of time. The Iris, the sentient species that governed the planet's ecosystem, had already made their presence known, and now it was only a matter of when they would force their hand. Maya was sitting at one of the consoles, her face lit by the pale glow of the screen. She looked up as Ethan entered, her expression a mix of exhaustion and determination. They're not backing down, she said quietly. The disruptions are getting worse. We've tried everything, shutting down the mining, recalibrating the grid, but nothing seems to calm the interference. It's as if the planet itself is fighting back. Ethan rubbed his temples, trying to shake the fog that had settled in his mind. What about negotiation? Could we try communicating with them? We've got the equipment for that now, don't we? Maya shook her head. We could try, but the Iris, it's not like talking to another species. It's not like making peace with another civilization. This planet is the civilization. The Iris are a part of it, not separate. The planet's entire ecosystem is alive and aware. It's not just a war between species, it's a battle for survival, for the planet's life force. Ethan's stomach churned. He had thought it might be as simple as a misunderstanding, a momentary clash of interests, but it was becoming painfully clear, this wasn't just about humans taking too much. This was about everything they had built here threatening to unravel the fabric of the planet itself. And the Iris were not just defending their home, they were fighting for it, as though their very existence depended on pushing humanity out. What if we tried going to their heart? The central biome, where their ecosystem is concentrated? Maybe they'd listen to us there, Maya suggested, her voice tinged with hope. But even as she said it, she knew how unlikely it was. Ethan didn't respond immediately. His mind was already calculating the risks, trying to weigh the possible outcomes. To journey into the heart of the Iris domain was not just dangerous, it was unknown territory. The heart of the planet was a place that no human had ever ventured, a place where the Iris collective consciousness was believed to reside. But what choice did they have? If it comes to that, we need to be prepared, Ethan said. We'll need a team, and we'll need to move fast. If we're going to survive, we have to understand them. Not just the creatures, but the planet itself. The decision was made, though neither of them truly understood what they were getting into. They gathered a team of the colony's most skilled members, Tarek, the communications officer, and Kai, the ship engineer, both of whom had been instrumental in maintaining the colony's technology and systems. Along with Maya, they would venture into the depths of the alien world, hoping for some form of understanding, something that could stop the crisis before it became irreversible. The journey was treacherous. The deeper they ventured into the wilderness, the more oppressive the environment felt. The trees grew thicker, taller, their roots twisting like serpents, and the air became heavier with every step. Ethan could feel the planet watching them, as though the very land was alive, aware of their intrusion. The creatures of the forest, the jellyfish-like entities, followed them at a distance, their glowing bodies flickering in and out of sight, like sentinels waiting for a sign of aggression. Maya led the way, her face drawn with determination, but Ethan could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. He could feel it too. They were walking into the unknown, and with every step, it seemed more likely that they weren't just walking toward the heart of the planet, they were walking toward their end. This is it, Maya said suddenly, breaking the silence. She had stopped in front of a massive, bioluminescent formation. The structure rose up before them like an alien cathedral, glowing faintly with an ethereal light, its surface pulsing rhythmically, as though alive. Ethan stepped forward, his heart pounding. It was beautiful, in a way that was beyond human comprehension. There were no visible doors, no windows, just the surface of the structure, its patterns shifting and undulating like the skin of a living creature. What now? Tarek asked, his voice filled with awe. We wait, Maya said, her voice steady. We wait for the Iris to come to us. It didn't take long. Moments later, the air around them seemed to shimmer, the atmosphere thickening, humming with a deep, resonant energy. Then, from the depths of the structure, a voice, no, not a voice, but a presence spoke. You come, despite our warning. You take what is not yours, and you do not listen. The words weren't spoken aloud, but transmitted directly into their minds. Ethan felt the weight of them settle into his chest like a stone. It wasn't a voice they were hearing, it was the collective consciousness of the Iris, the planet itself, speaking to them. We have seen your destruction. Your greed. Your need for survival, but you do not understand. You break what you do not know, and you take without regard. Maya stepped forward, her voice quiet but firm. We didn't mean to hurt you. We know. You did not mean to, the voice interrupted, the presence growing more intense, but your actions have consequences. We warned you. Yet you did not listen. Ethan's pulse raced. He had imagined a conversation, but nothing like this. Nothing so overwhelming. The planet didn't just see them as invaders, it saw them as a threat to its very existence, a threat that could no longer be ignored. What do you want from us? Maya's voice trembled. To stop. To leave. To understand. You cannot take without giving. You cannot destroy without consequence. Ethan felt a cold shiver run through him. The reality was setting in now. This wasn't a negotiation, it was an ultimatum. The Iris were giving them one last chance to leave, to walk away from the planet before it became too late. "We cannot leave," Maya said softly, her voice cracking. "This is our home now. We've invested too much to just walk away." The planet's response was immediate, and it was not kind. "Then you will be part of the end." The air around them seemed to shudder, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as a wave of energy crashed into him, like a physical force that rattled his bones. The world around them blurred, and for a moment, he thought they were all going to be consumed by the planet's rage, but then, just as quickly as it began, the energy subsided. The structure before them pulsed one final time, and the voice echoed in their minds, softer this time, more resigned, "We gave you a choice. You chose this path." Ethan felt the full weight of the consequences settle on him. The Iris had made their decision. Now it was up to humanity to decide whether they could live with the price they had to pay. The journey back to the colony was a silent one. None of them spoke as they retraced their steps through the forest, back toward the outpost. The reality of what had just happened, what they had just heard, was settling in. The Iris had warned them. And now, they were going to make them pay for not listening. Ethan's mind raced, and yet, there was nothing he could do to change the path they had set. The planet had already made its choice. The final confrontation was inevitable. The tension between humanity and the Iris had reached its peak. There was no turning back now. Ethan knew that the coming days would either seal their fate or be the beginning of a new, painful chapter. He could only hope that whatever the cost was, humanity would be strong enough to face it. End of story.